Welcome to GAT Chat. My name is Aaron. You may be watching this on the Armed Atlas channel, and you'll probably have some clips over on the Gun Club Radio YouTube channel. It's the podcast channel for you guys who are unfamiliar. Today, we're going to be having a very special conversation with the one and only Humble Marksman, or the Humble Marksman. If you haven't seen his channel, if you haven't seen the way he reviews guns, you're wrong. You're missing out. Do better. That said, I wanted to talk with him in particular because there's been a new wave of concealed carry handguns and performance carry handguns and even competition guns that seem like they're doing everything right, but also at the same time, a few things wrong, and it's causing some issues. We're going to dive into why it's such a big deal that companies are putting compensators on handguns that you carry. Does that actually help? Does it make it worse? Because I've been seeing some of your comments specifically about certain guns that have come out recently, and y'all have been complaining that they're not working for you. Now, is it you? Is it the gun? Is it the design? What is it? We're going to dive into that, but also we're going to be diving into this new wave of competition gun that is kind of marketed to the average consumer, and people say, oh, sweet, it's awesome competition. And they buy it and they take it to USPSA or whatever, and they put it in the box to see like what class am I going to be in. It doesn't fit, and it just isn't ideal. So let's talk about all that in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. David, the Humble Marksman, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing good. Thank you for being here. I know you heard the intro. Let's dive into it, man.
Well, for sure. So I guess keying off of the competition compensator, I guess we'll start with compensators.
Yeah.
For people who are kind of new to the handgun space, they think the compensator on a pistol goes back like maybe 10 years, the Roland Special. Dude deploys overseas in an elite, tier 1 unit with this compensated Glock. And, it kind of sets the world on fire, and we start getting red dots milled on slides and stuff like that. That's a warmed over idea from the competition space from 20 years prior. Like compensators and red dots on pistols is originally started, I think it was in the 1990 or 1991 USPSA Nationals, when Jerry Barnhart showed up with a Tasco scope on a 1911 pistol. And at the time, compensators go back even further than that. Like they started as kind of like barrel weights, and then they became kind of like ported barrel weights, and then they became like true compensators. And, fast forward to like 2015 with the Roland Special, all the cool guys on Instagram are starting to show up with these highly customized Glocks, because 2015 there were some good options, but not a bunch of great options quite like we have today in the handgun space. And so everybody's kind of working those things over. All the manufacturers are now fully on board. I think it started with Springfield Armory selling the Hellcat RDP, was the first like production comped gun that you could buy off the shelf.
Shoot, I've had guys in the last 2-3 years asking about the RDP. Like, hey, is it good? Like, should I get that one? Yeah.
It was great at the time. I think the understanding of how to make a compensator with work with a wide variety of ammunition has advanced beyond kind of what the RDP was. Still a fantastic gun. Shoots great. Don't get me wrong. But like now we're milling them so it looks like it's made with one piece with the slide. And, compensator designs have changed. So we're just getting more effective, compensators. And so, fast forward to that is, when you look at a company that's having to release a compensated handgun, they're releasing it to the lowest common denominator, which is the exact opposite of the philosophy of kind of a race gun with a compensator,
right?
Which is like a very narrow operating band. You're not just setting up a gun, you're setting up the ammunition that's going to work with it, so that, you have a very specific operating window for how the gun is supposed to work based on the ammo it is. But somebody making guns at scale doesn't necessarily have the luxury of being able to be like, it's only ever going to eat this one specific load of ammunition that's, plus or minus 30 feet per second. So we know how much gas is coming out. It has to be for like everything from, right. When SIG is doing design validation on their compensated guns, one of the rounds that they use for design validation to make sure it works is like frangible, like 95 grain frangible ammo, which is like high velocity, a lot of gas. And it ends up like choking a lot of guns in compensator design. So they get it to work with 95 grain fringe, they get it to work with 147 subsonics, and kind of everything in the middle tends to work, but it's not optimized. And
Right.
now we're getting into shooters buying these sophisticated guns that they don't understand, like how the gun is actually working. So they're not necessarily buying the ammo that kind of optimizes the system and how it kind of plays well. So, they throw ammo at a gun, which is a system with the ammo, and they're not able to get the gun to perform. Or, another thing is with a compensator on a gun, it punishes limp wristing in a way the gun without the compensator wouldn't. So dudes with compromised skill are getting, some issues, and they'll swear up and down in the comment section that it's not a shooter related issue. It never is, apparently. But that's a lot of times what it is. Sometimes the guns don't work. Like that happens. It's,
Right.
Sauer had a bunch of bad extractors on the fuse when they launched it, and they're having to RMA some bad extractors, which isn't good, but they're taking care of it. And, other brands had issues as well.
Kudos to them.
I mean, it's a mechanical product, and there's a lot of parts coming from a lot of sources. And even if the spec on the part is correct, and the ones that they test are correct, they can't test every single part. So the ones that are just out of spec are going to have problems. And that's kind of what happens when you manufacture at scale, is some bad ones are going to make it out into the wild sometimes.
And to be very fair with them, and I don't want to kill your train of thought, most of these manufacturers can't produce all the parts going into their guns. So as they're coming in from their suppliers, they can't QC everything, and something will come through eventually.
Or when they test fire, they're test firing a different brand of ammunition where they can't test fire it with every single round that you could possibly put through it. I mean, Daniel Defense had issues with a certain specific type of ammo that led to keyholing in the rifling in their initial barrels, and they're making good on that as well. So I mean, like, everybody, when you manufacture at scale, is eventually going to get into problems.
Right.
But those problems, when you have a compensated handgun, you're really opening the door for a lot of issues potentially. And I mean, we see it. I mean, the Canik TTI is one that has been having issues. The one that I had issues with recently was the Smith & Wesson Carry Comp, which
I was very excited for. That thing is beautiful.
It looks awesome. It's the best looking handgun I think anybody's made in a while, but it's it was not very exciting when I actually went to go shoot it.
Which is such a bummer, because specifically with the TTI, and I want to very quickly address some of the guys who have been leaving comments very upset that their experience was sullied when they spent the $1,000 or more on their TTI Combat, took it out to the range, and they've been shooting for 10, 15, 20, 30, sometimes more years, and the gun just isn't running for them for one reason or another. I know we actually had the marketing manager for Canik address some of the issues and say, like, hey, we recommend this, and please don't limp wrist, because the gun will fail if you do that. And a lot of people didn't take that well. But based on what you're saying, that definitely could be part of it, if not an actual issue.
Oh, 100%. The more basically, the more optimized the product becomes, the more issues you are going to run into with less than optimum ammo and less than optimum shooters. I mean, and another thing that people conflate in the comment section, like, it doesn't matter how long you've been around guns if you haven't been pushing to improve and develop skill. Because I've watched a guy who was a retired policeman choke a Wilson Combat 1911, beautiful gun, blame the ammo every step of the way, and it was 100% him riding the safety. Like, he was not putting his thumb on the safety, and so what would happen in recoil, he would bump the safety on, causing the slide to slow down just enough to cause it to fail to feed. And he swore up and down that it was the ammo, and I'm sitting to his support side watching him do this, and I tell him exactly what's happening, and he gets angry and tells me what time it is and how he's retired LEO and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, you must not have carried a single action when you were an LEO, because you don't know how to shoot it, and it shows.
And that's extremely fair. The first time I shot was it a Jericho or something? I can't remember the exact gun. I had a lot of issues, and I'm just like, oh, that's weird. I've been shooting at a decent level for a little bit. Why am I struggling? Oh, it's because I don't really understand the manual arms and what it really means to control this gun, where to put my thumbs to make sure I'm not causing issues. And, you know, different guns have safety on, safety off in different ways. And if you don't understand that, you're going to fail, at least
I'll give
in
you a
my
great
experience.
example of that.
Go ahead.
I shot a Desert Eagle in a USPSA match, and I had,
I saw
previously
that.
put like 30 rounds through the thing. Didn't
You're a
know how to
maniac.
grip it because it's not very ergonomic.
No.
And I was trying to get as high as possible on it with my support hand. And in recoil, my thumb hit the takedown button, and the recoil is stout enough to where the lever rotated and the barrel popped off the front of the gun and it started trying to come
Whoa.
apart.
Are you
Yeah.
kidding? They're
Yeah.
in a match?
So halfway through the stage, like the barrel comes off the front of the gun, and I get stopped by the safety officer because my barrel's hanging off the front of the gun. And that's a good example of me. And, I'm a pretty accomplished shooter, but I don't know how to shoot Desert Eagles really well. And I induced a malfunction of the gun coming apart.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can happen to anybody, but like not apparently not anybody in the comment section. And
Right.
looking in the mirror when the gun is having an issue is never apparently part of the solution. Like the product's just supposed to work
Yeah.
regardless of the shooter, regardless of the ammo they're putting through it, regardless of the condition of the firearm. Because like the other thing about compensated firearms is like slide velocity is everything. And so
Mhm.
the like, I never clean my Glock guys take that same mentality forward onto a compensated pistol, which needs slide velocity to work.
Mhm.
And they don't clean it, they don't lube it, and the slide slows down and the gun starts to choke. And it's the gun's fault, not their fault.
Right. I
So
mean,
it's
I guess it's kind of like
tough.
a car, right? If you start tuning it to a certain level and you screw something up, the whole system's gonna, fall apart. I do maybe briefly want to touch on because Shadow Systems. I know you guys
Mm-hmm.
have had a working relationship for a while in regards to you reviewing guns and whatnot. Um, they've famously said like, "Hey, we need our break-in period. Please do not judge the gun on the first 100 rounds or so. Please give it the break-in period." And not all the handguns have required that from every single unit. But there's a lot of people who are like, "Listen, if the gun doesn't run every round out the box, as soon as I take it out the box, literally in the range at the gun store, then I don't want it." Yet you've been very vocal about, hey, higher quality guns with tighter tolerances. Can you explain that for the layman? Can you explain it for me who doesn't quite understand what you mean?
Yeah. So first and foremost, my last little like tirade, some of these people were probably rolling their eyes and saying, he's just beating up on me, the end user. That's not true. I'm just saying, as part of the troubleshooting process, always look in the mirror first and fix what you can fix without screwing with the gun, because that's usually easier.
Mm.
Diagnose your problems, try and shoot it one handed and see if taking your support hand off the gun fixes it. And if that's the case, your support hand's a problem. If you're still getting issues, try shooting it with your left hand with no other hand on the gun and see if you're still getting issues, to see if it's your right hand hitting something on the gun that it's not supposed to. And once you're confident both of those, and then choke up on the gun and really lean into it hard and shoot it, with very stiff wrists, like flex your entire arm so there's no way that there's a potential for limp wristing, and bear into the back of that gun like you're pressing up on a bench press. And if that doesn't fix the issue, then start looking at the gun. That's all. That's the whole tirade, is basically just saying, fix what you can fix with yourself and then fix the gun. So jumping into the break-in period now, break-in period is a thing, especially on like very high-end like race guns, for instance.
Hmm.
They are machined to a very precise tolerance that will loosen up with time. If you think about like metal on metal contact, you put a lube in there, you shoot the gun a little bit, some of that carbon and gunpowder is going to get inside that oil and act as sort of like a lapping compound that sort of loosens up the gun. That's why the guns right out of the box are like super tight. Not all the guns. If you've only ever handled like production guns, they're designed to a tolerance. But even still, those, the issue with the production guns, like the Shadow system specifically, use match grade barrels.
Hmm.
And that means that like the way a Glock barrel locks up in the slide is like the hood of the barrel locks into sort of the top of the breech face at the top of the slide, and that geometry is tight enough to where like it's right angle corners, so it stays locked up really tight. That's great because it produces more accurate groups, but like as that edge is getting broken, as it's slipping past each other a little bit, there's more resistance. So that's what's causing the gun to choke. And the other side of that is the recoil spring. Like when a spring starts its life from the factory, it's as long as it's ever going to be, and it's going to be as stiff as it's ever going to be. And they're designed to have kind of a working tolerance, and they don't get into that tolerance until, it depends on, how the gun is engineered, but, Shadow Systems says it's about 100 rounds or whatever. So I take their word for that. Their guns are designed to have that spring have its kind of working life start at about 100 rounds. When the spring gets a little bit shorter and the resistance of the spring kind of decreases with use. And you can simulate that by just racking the gun manually a bunch of times. Like you can certainly simulate it, but even still, like fire fitting together, because you're introducing forces of recoil and stuff like that, you're going to get some magic that as the stuff will start to smooth out, and that should happen. Now, whether or not all guns should be that way, it just depends on the spec that they're built to. I'll give you an example of that. Like Glocks are great. They're phenomenally reliable guns, but they're not the most accurate guns. They are accurate, but they're not the most accurate. And a good example of that is the MHS handgun trials had an accuracy standard of 2.85 inches at 25 meters. And the reason Glock didn't get the contract is because their gun couldn't shoot a 2.85 group at 25 meters. It was shooting like a 3.74 or something like that. It was
interesting.
It was still very good, but it wasn't what the Army standard was for accuracy.
Wow.
That's not popular to a lot of people on the internet who have their pet conspiracy theories, but that data is available. You can look it up.
Interesting. Now, is that why they created the rotating barrel, or was that just, I guess, is that another project they were working on?
I don't know about the Glock 46 and why that's a thing, but I think that's really cool that they made them, and I'd love it if they sold them here, but they don't yet.
They'll sell a bunch. Like they're going to sell every one. So
there's not very many rotating barrel designs in the U.S. I mean, the PX4 and the Grand Power is the only ones I'm aware of.
And shoot, I mean, that's not a rotating barrel. I'm thinking High Point, but doesn't rotate. It's just stiff.
That's a blowback barrel, like it's fixed in place. Yeah.
Not my favorite, but the 380 is a 380.
Okay, well,
it's a 380.
I haven't shot a High Point 380. I might have to see what that's all about.
Is it out yet? I don't know. I shot it at a GunCon. So
okay,
yeah. But back to, I guess, what we were talking about with, and we talked about compensators on guns. We talked about a bunch. But can we maybe talk a little bit about kind of this new craze of adding all the sports toolery to the duty or performance handguns, and is that causing problems in the consumer side, and is that causing problem as the consumers are going over to competition?
Yes, it is. So the Canik SFX. Back in the day, if you can remember when they first started coming over to the States and everybody's freaking out that there was a $400 gun that came optic ready and had a slide racker and, had a great trigger out of the box. But that feature set at the time was, if you put the slide racker in, made the gun illegal in pretty much every division except for open division in USPSA, which is like the full tilt race guns. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, like this is part of the reason why I started a YouTube channel back in the day, because dudes like Nut and Fancy were like, yeah, it's got all these competition features. And at the time, I don't even think there was a division that allowed red dots besides open, because like the manufacturers were ready to start selling red dot pistols before the consumers were ready to buy them. Like the shooting sports hadn't warmed up to slide right optics as like the only place you could shoot them was open division, and they weren't competitive. And like back at the same time, the Smith & Wesson Performance, and this is like 2013, 2014 timeframe. The Smith & Wesson Performance Center had, dating myself a little. But the Smith & Wesson Performance Center for their M&P had like a ported barrel. And it's like, that's cool. The only place you can shoot that is open division, and this is not a competitive open gun. And they were marketing it at the time as a competition gun, but like, short of Steel Challenge Open, that was like the only place that gun kind of made sense. And it still wasn't, the meta or most competitive for what that's supposed to be. Yeah. And we still see it a little bit too, like the TTI Combat. Go ahead.
Can you just let people know who are maybe unfamiliar, what's the price point for a truly competitive open gun?
The least responsible amount of money, or the least amount of money you can responsibly shoot open, is about $3,600 for an open gun. That's before the optic, and that's
Right.
before the magazines you need. And each of the magazines is like 125 to 140
Right.
bucks,
Yeah.
and it has to shoot 9 major. So if you're shoot or 9 major or 38 super comp, which is like 40 to 50 cents a round. So it's expensive stuff. If you're buying it, it's expensive to reload because you're supposed to shoot jacketed hollow points. And those are more expensive than round nose and whatever. But
Yeah.
a good open gun's about $5,000.
Okay. So we're going from some of these guns that people are like pushing out to the market on the consumer production side. It's like, hey, this is $1,000 competition gun, such as the TTI Combat you were just about to reference.
Mm-hmm.
And they say like, hey, well, with the gun, with the way it's set up, it can only be used in open division against guns that are 5 to 10 times as much in regards to like MSRP. And then what would you say? Double, triple the performance? Like, are you getting so much better performance out of those guns?
Yeah, I mean, yes, frankly. The guns are more accurate. The slide cycles faster, so it's easy to shoot fast. I mean, somebody who's a good enough shooter can kind of bridge the gap. Like Nils has won, national championships with Canucks against 2011s, but Nils is a freak. Nils is not the rule.
Right.
So they're
Bro,
fine guns. But like with the Terran Tactical, like that's kind of it's an interesting one because Terran Tactical is known for two things: the movie guns, and then making like race guns for 3-gun competition. And so the TTI Combat, it's like, what is it trying to be? Is it the Terran Tactical like competition side, or is it that? Because it's got a compensator. So like IDPA carry optics is still on the table. You could shoot it there. But nothing in USPSA makes sense because it's an open gun as far as USPSA is concerned.
Right.
You could say it's a carry gun, but if you felt the grip texture on it, it's a good aggressive grip texture, which I wouldn't want anywhere close to my skin.
I carried it for like all of 30 seconds on the range because I was carrying a holster that was compatible with the light that I had on it. I was just like, ooh, that's scary. I'm afraid.
I wouldn't want to move around with my stomach touching that gun in an appendix holster just because it's got an amazing shooter's texture, but there is too much texture on a carry gun.
Yeah.
And that gun has it for sure.
Oh yeah. Even still, it's rather large. It's significantly.
It's a 5-inch gun, basically.
Right. I mean, you got the comp on it. That's not a good carry gun. Now, if you said that's a home defense gun, maybe. But also,
sure,
in a home defense struggle, I kind of want a gun that's going to run not despite me. You know what I mean? Where you said, hey, if you put a comp on it, you may accidentally limp wrist, inducing malfunctions, and I don't want a gun that I have to babysit in those stressful situations. I want a gun that's just going to run.
For sure. And the other side of it is like if you're actually trying to hit your target and be accountable to your hits, you're not shooting fast enough to like utilize the compensator necessarily. Like compensator is very important when there's two types of shooting. There's reactive shooting where you're reacting to a sight picture and pulling a trigger. And there's predictive where you can kind of guess at the distance the target is, how much of it's available, and how much you can disrespect the trigger and just pull the trigger as much as you need to until you decide you're done shooting. Predicting how the dot's going to move and how you're going to call your shots and all this kind of stuff. Great for shooting competitions, probably not great for self-defense. Right. So like all of these guns, like if you listen to, I've listened to podcasts with dudes from the Force Science Institute and all this stuff talking about, the average split time in a defensive encounter is like a half second or something like that. And
which is really slow.
But at the same time, a compensator in a half second isn't doing anything. Like if you're shooting like 20 splits, like, roughly 2x as fast as a half second split, then you're starting to get the benefit of more of the stability the compensator provides. But a non-compensated gun can recover completely in half a second. Mm-hmm. So what is the compensator doing? And there's a saying I like to use, which is like, if an advantage can't be exploited, it's not an advantage. So that's like true. We're very guilty of gun jewelry. I'm as guilty as anybody of this. I like handguns. They're my jam. And I want the biggest, prettiest handgun I can fit into my waistband. But at the same time, if I get really serious about it being a self-defense tool,
Mhm.
the features that I need on that gun fall off dramatically.
And that's true. Now, I'm not about to, co-sign the Wilson combat futtery. I've got friends at Wilson. Love you guys. But some, their media side is insane. Talking about, well, you don't need a flashlight. You don't need this. You don't need that. And a lot of guys, I think even yourself, don't carry lights on the guns. Maybe I'm misremembering our conversations,
If
but
I go out at night, I have a light on my gun. But when I go
okay,
out during the day, I don't have a light on my gun because there's one in
fair,
the sky.
fair. Now, point being is, if it looks cool, isn't that what matters? Does it look good? But truthfully, like you just said, if you can't exploit that advantage of the compensator and the this and the that, and okay, when this has this gun is, was it the Walther? They made a steel frame gun that was super heavy.
Yeah, I've got two of them. I've got the Q5 match
Yeah,
steel and
bro,
the
so
or
heavy.
no, the PDP. Oh well, I don't even remember the name of
The
it.
the,
The
the
steel frame five
PDP
inch PDP.
steel pro.
Yeah,
Add a
and
few
I got
more
a
letters to it.
Q4. I have the Q4 SF, which is the steel frame 4-inch gun, which is for like duty carry. And that gun is brilliant, but nobody made carry holster. I was like, I want to carry this gun, and nobody made
It's
any
so
holsters
heavy,
for it for
bro.
like 2 or 3 years. It's like 40 ounces. It's a really
Dude,
heavy little gun, but it's great.
my 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 issue with every handgun that comes out, and when I formulate a review, when I do a review, admitting that my review upload schedule is not good, my question is always like, can you guys buy holsters for this gun? Like with the Canik TTI Combat, is there a holster with the 2311s that came out last year? Could you get a holster for it? And thankfully, they answered the question. There was going to be some holster compatibility, but manufacturers, honestly, in my opinion, don't do enough to make sure that holster compatibility is available from some of the smaller custom shops, as well as the bigger, more box store style companies. And maybe you agree or disagree, but that's how I
You have
feel.
to have an ecosystem on day one. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to the guys over at Kimber, and the KDS 9C was a brilliant gun, but there were zero holsters for it. Like this is a compact, which is a carry gun,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no holster support for it. Like, what are we? And there were no optic plates
Does it
available
not
when they
have like a
launched the gun.
standard like 1911 profile? Because I know a lot of 2011s share the same profile.
No, it's not. It's not. It technically isn't a 192011. It's a single action only firearm that is kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
192011, but it's not. Like it's different. It's got different parts. Some of the, I think maybe the sear and hammer are that of a 1911, but that's it.
Oh, okay.
It's got different safeties. It's got a different slide stop. It has a linked barrel like a 1911, but it's just not the same profile
Okay.
as a
So
1911.
that that's nuts. I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they're just like, the market will adopt. Or it's one of those guns that they say it's a carry gun, but they just expect you to put it in the safe and talk about it with your friends.
I think they were excited about it and wanted to get it out. Like I don't know why it was the end of last summer. I think when they launched it, and it's a great gun. Honestly, I like the gun. And
Okay.
there's holsters for it now, and there's
Wait, this summer or last summer?
into last summer.
Okay, because I know they
It
dropped
was
something recently that you went out to go check out.
yeah, well, yeah. They have a couple releases, and one of them is the R7 carbon carry. I think R7CC. It's basically the names are terrible. I know, dude. It's just like I wish I could work at a market. I give the guys at SIG a bunch of crap because
Oh
they're
yeah.
just like they have their whole like language, and it's like
Mhm.
droid assembly language from Star Wars or something stupid. Wherever it's just like I can decode what this means, but it's like 5 words long. Like just give it one name and let
Right.
it just be that name.
AXG, Legion, Pro, add a few
Yeah,
more, add the name of the shooter behind it.
yeah. The new gun that they had that we were just talking about before you went live is the P320X5 SXG. Which, if you speak SIG, you know exactly what kind of gun that is. But why not just call it something else? Like,
Give it a cool name, bro.
yeah,
Let's do it
yeah.
right now. Cool name that it should have been called. Or are you saving that for the video?
Oh, dude, I haven't come up with. It's really shiny. I don't know. maybe something silly like Chromie or something like that, but it has to be like a cool guy,
The
suburban
Chromium.
dangerous sort of name. Yeah. So
Dude, are you able to show it, or are you saving that for something else?
we're not live. So yes, I can show it. As long as you aren't going to get like kicked off YouTube because they don't let you do it on live
No, no, no,
stream.
no.
So if
Yeah,
you want to
no.
see
This
it,
is
I'm happy to
pre-recorded.
show it.
Let's go. If it's not under some sort of locking.
No, they already announced it. They announced it
Okay.
at SIGNEXT, but let's see. But there it is. It is a steel frame P320. It's like an X5, like a traditional X5 is, which is a steel frame. Like the 226 started the X5 sort of lineage, and when they had a stainless steel frame, it was 5 inches long rather than 4.5. So this is a 5-inch P320 with a steel frame. So it is truly an X5 as far as like that kind of spec is concerned. The steel frame, I know for a fact they've been in development for at least 2 years. I on my podcast back during like late COVID era or something like that, I had Phil Strader from SIG on, and he showed me some of the
What a
working
get.
prototypes he was working on at the time, but they weren't passing design validation because they wanted it to pass 10,000 rounds. And one of the ways they tested it was with a caliber exchange 10 millimeter kit, and the frames were cracking, and they weren't satisfied with that. So they had
As
to
you should
figure out
be.
how to.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the aftermarket aluminum frames, like on the P365s, SIG ran design validation on their designs too, and some of them would crack within 5,000 rounds. Most of the people buying the pretty P365s aren't shooting 5,000 rounds to them, so
Right.
they'll never find out whether they're going to crack or not.
True.
But, I mean, SIG has a reputation for using their customers as beta testing, and I get why people say that, but I mean, they have one of the most legitimate quality control testing apparatus, because I mean the MHS handguns have to have, I think each handgun gets like 25 or 50 rounds put through it before it leaves the factory, and it has to pass a ton of specs. So like their whole QC program is based around the contracts, and it is applied to the civilian products too, just not quite at the same standard.
I mean,
They're not shooting,
it
they're not
wouldn't make
test
sense to
firing the
do that.
guns with 50 rounds.
Right. And I wish they would. Shoot, I wish every company would run 50 rounds of, 2 or 3 different, loads just to be sure.
You just increase the cost of every gun like 40 or 50 bucks if you've done that. So
Yeah. I mean, if only, shoot, go to a premium manufacturer, go to Walther, it's $200 more. Guaranteed.
well,
Dude.
yeah. But they're all cool. Like it's crazy. I've gotten to tour some of these factories. I've seen Kimber, I've seen SIG now, Shadow Systems, I toured them, and the premium manufacturing everybody is using now is just off the charts. The outfits that are not using robots and stuff to the extent these outfits are really behind the curve. I can give you an example of one product that's not using robots. The Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0, the front sight's not centered in the slide. Is 0.5 millimeter cocked to the right, making the gun shoot left if you had a perfect sight picture.
Now, is that your
And
copy or is that in general?
that's my copy. But I had several people in the comments of that say they had the same issue with their front sight. Like the guns shoot left because the front sights aren't centered. SIG uses a robot to install every front sight, and within about 6 microns, they can get the front sight centered on the slide. So you don't hear about people complaining about SIG shooting left because the sights are basically perfect when they leave the factory.
I mean, we have the technology. We can.
Yeah, we do. They're doing it, man.
Yeah. No, but that's fascinating. We could do a whole podcast on your experience in some of these tours and what you've seen and some of the, I guess, the deficiencies or inefficiencies. Like we go to Wilson Combat in their gunsmith made guns, and I've had guys who work there, high up saying like, hey, it takes us like 6 months to a year. We're trying to get that time down. I'm like, you're trying to 6 months to build a gun, but these are not typical guns.
No.
Is that, in your opinion, is that a long time to build something like a Wilson Combat?
Apparently, because that's how long it takes. But I mean, realistically, what that is probably they don't start working on the gun immediately.
Right.
Like it might take them. I mean, if you consider if they're not doing the coatings on site, they've got to send the things out to be coated, and that adds probably 3 weeks to that, and then they've
Literally
got to
weeks.
test it
Yeah.
for a week or whatever.
Hmm.
And you know, it probably takes 2 months of hands-on time to like run the bits through kind of all the stuff. Like an outfit like Wilson Combat probably is still using a lot of hand fitting, which
Hmm.
is great, but can lead to inconsistent results if not done, perfectly. Nighthawk also does it as well. I mean, those are,
Hmm.
very similar companies.
But they're also extremely expensive. So
Well, I
is it?
mean, the labor's wildly expensive. Like Sig, on the most recent time I went on their tour, and like this is actually interesting, and I think that people will like this. But
Okay.
both brands, Sig and Kimber, are looked, poo-pooed upon like they used to be better than what they are today,
Mm,
and that's because they modernized and started producing at scale,
mm,
and they started using more machines, machining to tolerance, like removing sort of the hand fitting stuff. Like the old Sigs made in West Germany were effectively like hand fit gunsmith type guns
yeah.
sold at 2x a production gun price, because I mean they've always been like $1,200 back when handguns were $400. um,
They're still the same price.
yeah, and they're still the same price now, but like they're designed to a tolerance. Like
Right.
when Sig started making the 226 in America, the West German company wouldn't share with them like the drawings or anything like that. So they had to reverse engineer a West German 226 and then re-engineer it to be made on the machines they had in America,
That's
because
fascinating.
the company we call Sig Sauer now is actually just Sig Arms, the former U.S. importer of Sig Sauer, that assumed all of the intellectual property and all that kind of stuff, and is now the company that is Sig Sauer. But Kimber did the same thing. Kimber started producing 1911s at scale with more modern machining, and the guns used to be amazing. Then apparently there was a dark spell where the guns weren't amazing. I
Hmm.
don't know. I haven't really messed with Kimbers until the KDS 9C came out kind of last summer, and I've had the opportunity to shoot, I guess, 3 or 4 or 5 different Kimbers now. They've all been fine, but
Mm,
as they were teething and coming up the learning curve for producing at scale, they're there now. I mean, the guns are going to work out of the box for the most part, but they're not as tight because they're designed to a tolerance and all that kind of stuff. So
right.
like Sig started to learn to produce at scale and design to tolerance. Kimber's done the same thing. All the critical dimensions fit like they're supposed to. It's just everything about the gun isn't necessarily hand fit like it used to be.
Fair. Now, I did want to just touch on one of the main topics before we kind of wrap up our conversation here for all to see. Um, Now we've talked about, hey, a lot of these guns that you're buying, this $1,000, this $1,200 that, it they're cool guns. They look really cool. They're awesome, but they're gonna get you destroyed if you decide to take this gun and go run competition. If somebody's serious about trying to get started in competition, but they don't have $10,000 to drop on all the kit and all the gear and all the accoutrement, like what would you recommend? Top one, top two, top three guns to actually buy. You can have this gun for home defense. It's good for competition. It'll actually get you in a division that works. What are you recommending?
So it's always going to be a full size gun. And the type of full size gun isn't the most important, because as long as you can get a full grip on it, you can do big gun manipulations with it. And it's, if you can hit, I mean, if it's 3 inches at 25 yards, that's plenty accurate. And most handguns can do that. No problems. So you can really, like, if you're going to be casual in competition, you don't need the meta gun to be casual, because the gun is not going to lose you the competition. The fact that you're not as serious about it and trained specifically for it is going to be what makes you lose. And there's actually like a curve. Like, I'm going to use my hand since you've given me the whole screen. So let's see. Okay, it doesn't mirror me, so I'm going to have to try this. So here we go. So like, if you're brand new, you're over here on the curve. The gun doesn't matter at all, because all the problems are deficiencies with the shooter. If you get up to kind of the middle of the pack right here, the gun matters a lot, because your skill, your technique and your skill is not refined enough to where, a gun that will mask those problems makes life a little bit better. But then when you get really good, the gun doesn't matter as much anymore, except in open division, where it's, incredibly important that the gun can handle 9 major or 38 super comp. So it doesn't matter all that much. But I would say if you've got a budget of sub $1,000, there's a lot of options. The gun weight makes a difference. Like a gun that weighs 40 ounces is going to be more forgiving and easier to shoot than a gun that weighs 26 ounces. A lighter trigger, like there's a ratio of handgun weight to trigger pull weight. If the trigger in ounces is lighter than the weight of the gun in ounces, then that gun is going to be significantly more forgiving than a gun where the trigger, a 6-pound trigger, that's 70, what is it, 96 ounces. So like a 96-ounce trigger on a 26-ounce gun is very difficult to shoot, just intrinsically. It's just the way it is.
Okay, wow.
So
because I don't think we talk about that enough, even in like the defensive handgun side, which I'm more into. So you're saying everybody should just save up their money and go buy a Shadow 2? Is that what you're saying?
No, Shadow 2 is about $1,000. So if you have $1,000 price limit, then a Shadow 2 is an option for you these days, and it's a great, absolutely fantastic competition gun. I mean, another gun that fits the people don't like to hear it, but the P320 Legion, the tungsten version of basically this gun, really, really easy to shoot, and costs about $1,000. Fits in a bunch of different divisions. At this point, the 2 divisions you're targeting, 3 divisions, I guess. In IDPA, it's carry optics. That's where everybody competes. In USPSA, it's going to be carry optics or limited optics, unless you have a whole mess of cash and decide to go play an open, which is still a very popular division. Actually, it's like it's the number 4 division now. So no 3, yeah, number 3 division now. So it's the carry optics, limited optics is going to be where you want to live. So getting a red dot on a handgun is, I won't say it's required, but it's a really good idea. And I mean, Canik makes the Mete series of handguns from Canik. If you don't have a bundle to spin, fantastic handguns, really accurate, really good shooting. The Walther PDPs they're a little violent recoiling as they come from the factory, but if you play with the recoil spring weight, go a little bit lighter on that recoil spring, it's not as violent. It's actually a pretty sweet shooting gun at that point, and they're super duper accurate.
Gabby Franco said she dropped the Spring Co in there.
Yeah, that's another option.
Yeah,
and I mean, the old M&P 2.0s actually are the polymer frame ones, not the aluminum frame ones that they position as a competition gun. The polymer frame ones, fantastic guns. So, I mean, any of those are great to get started with. The Echelon's honestly not bad either. If you wanted to go that route, it's totally fine. It accommodates all the different optics. It's pretty good trigger, very good grip. And a Prodigy, honestly. Prodigy's is rough a start as they may have gotten into with the 5-inch guns. If you get a 5-inch Prodigy that runs, they're very nice shooting guns, super duper nice. And you can build those up to be competitive with $3,000 and $4,000 guns easy. For with an optic and everything, like sub $2,000 probably if you shop around. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, dude, thank you for dropping that list, because I know people are like, dude, like, so you're telling me that my TTI Combat is not necessarily the best competition gun. I'm like, well, I don't know. He said
it's a really cool gun. It's fantastic.
He said it. I mean, I love it. I mean, they sent one. It's sitting right there. I love it. But
it's a great gun. If you make sure it's oiled and feed it ammo it likes, because if it's got a compensator, you just need to rule out that it's going to shoot anything you can fit in the chamber, because like it's going to have an operating tolerance just like anything else. It's a system.
Yeah, and a second spring, which is not, dude. I saw on Reddit, somebody's like, yeah, I got the gun and I put the second spring in and it didn't run. And I was like, wow. The one that's designed for ammo that's like sub 1,000 FPS.
That's what I immediately put that spring in my gun.
And it worked for you.
Yeah, it works great.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
I wonder what
I've had issues with all, like the Shadow Systems DR920P comes with 2 springs too, and it's got the duty one installed. And I was like, oh, I'm not shooting duty ammo. I'm shooting light loads. So I'm putting the light spring in, and it works. Like with a compensated gun, if you're not getting it throwing the brass like 4 or 5 feet to your right, put a lighter spring in it, a recoil spring in it, and it will. Like with a striker gun, you can only take that so far before you get into early unlocking issues. But with hammer fired guns, like my open guns have like an 8-pound variable spring. So it's actually like lighter depending on where you are in like the spring cycle. So like I have an eight
Wow.
pound spring on a gun with a massive compensator because that's all it takes.
Fascinating. Dude. Well, we've been going on for about 45 minutes, and I'm sure people want to get back to their lives. We want to make sure, I'm going to make sure we drop links in the description so people can go check out your reviews. Anything new coming out within the next few weeks that people should look forward to?
Uh, on my side, I've got a review coming, or it's not a review. It's a comparison of the Atlas Erebus, which is like a $8,000 pistol,
Mm-hmm.
to an Atlas Apollo, which is like a $6,000 pistol. And like it's like
Bro just called
supercar
us pulling
videos.
through.
Like everybody likes supercars, but nobody wants to watch videos about expensive guns. Like to me, those are interesting.
I
But
mean, they are. So everybody should refine your caveman taste. He called us poor in 3 different languages.
no, dude, I don't have those guns. Those were like they sent them out. I got 2 weeks with them. I sent them
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He said, "Let's
It's
make a
nice
few
to live
videos."
vicariously through other people's
Dude,
guns.
dude. So there's that. Anything coming out that you're like, hey, look forward to this in regards to guns that you have reviewed?
As far as the review, like there's cool stuff coming that I can't tell you about,
Ah, okay. So
but
people should just subscribe and hit the notification bell to see it when it comes out because embargo.
there will be some cool guns coming out in the fourth quarter this year, and I can't tell you about them right now, but there are cool guns coming,
Okay.
and yeah,
And
so
you will be reviewing them. So people should definitely go check you out then.
some of them for sure.
Some of them.
The coolest one, yes.
Dude, I'm here for it. Guys, so I'm
There
going
we
to go
go.
ahead and sign out here. Guys, thank you so much for watching, listening. Gat Chat, this is a part of what we do on the Gun Club Radio YouTube channel. So definitely make sure you're subscribed over there. Make sure you are paying attention to what we're doing or what David's doing on his channel, The Humble Marksman. He's been doing this for a long time, and he's fantastic. If you haven't watched one of his reviews, it's probably one of the most thorough but also entertaining videos that you can watch regarding firearms. There's a lot of fluff out there. He's not fluffing. How do you say that in a way that's not weird? Anyways, guys, thanks so much. See y'all next time. Peace.